10 terrifying Ice Age creatures. The Irish elk, an animal which is neither Irish nor an elk. Good job naming this one, guys. Anyway, to give you an idea of the size of these animals, imagine a deer as big as a moose, then quadruple the size of its antlers, and boom, you have an Irish elk. I really can't overstate the size of these guys' antlers. They were 12 feet across, and each weighed around 45 pounds. Now these heavy antlers sound impressive at first, but then the more that you think about it, the more it makes you wonder just how practical they really were. While I'm sure these antlers were a useful tool of defense for these elk, the second one of their antlers broke, it meant their head now had to maintain a 45-pound imbalance. That's like trying to keep your head straight while taping a 6-year-old to the side of it. Of course, they were massive animals with massive necks, so a 45-pound imbalance wouldn't be as detrimental to them, but it's still something to think about. The antlers were also very resource intensive. So while the antler might have helped these elk, a similar, much more normal-sized antler could probably do the same job while being a whole lot cheaper. Basically, their massive antlers were a whole lot of diminishing returns. And this isn't the only way that these massive antlers were the downfall of the Irish elk. That's because other people have theorized a reason that the elk died out is because the ladies kept on wanting the deers with the biggest antlers. So much so that there was a complete lack of diversity, because all the elks with the biggest BBCs, or big boisterous calcium infused antlers, kept on getting all the play, causing the population to slowly die out. That and a changing climate, plus humans hunting them, all caused the downfall of these animals. And the last Irish elk is thought to have died out 7,600 years ago. While a lot of animals from the Ice Age are terrifying, they are usually terrifying because they're just some beefed up version of an animal that already exists today. But take a look at this guy. There's really nothing like it, and its weirdness doesn't stop there, because one of the animal's closest relatives is actually a kangaroo. That's because Diprotodon comes from a branch of mammals called marsupials, which includes most mammals native to Australia. Now, even though Diprotodons are relatives of kangaroos, the animal's actual closest relatives are koalas and wombats. But unlike these two, the Diprotodon was humongous, because while they weren't super tall or super long, they were built like refrigerators. They filled in the role of a grazing tanky animal and weighed in at 3 tons, so kind of like an Australian bison. Anyway, the extinction of the Diprotodon seems to line up with around the time Aboriginal Australians first landed there, so they probably died out from being overhunted. Plus, it was around a time when many animals in Australia were going extinct. Imagine you took a normal rhinoceros, beefed it up 6,000 pounds, added a 2-foot long horn, and covered the whole thing in a Sherpa jacket. Boom, you have a woolly rhino. So you may be wondering, these are big ass rhinos, which is pretty cool, so why are they only number 8 on the list? Well, unfortunately, they really are just big rhinos with some fur on them. I couldn't find anything else interesting on them, so to make up for that, a new number 8 animal. Alright, you guys ever heard of Ankylosaurus? Is that one dinosaur with the huge shell? Well, Glyptodon was kind of the Ice Age mammal version of that. These guys were related to armadillos, and it is kind of like an armadillo if you gave one like 10 steroid cycles and then squinted a lot or just went blind because they look nothing alike. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, these guys clocked in at 11 feet long, 5 feet tall, and weighed 4,400 pounds. And they were pretty slow animals. They just spent most of their day grazing around for grass. Anyway, the Glyptodon went extinct around 12,000 years ago, and once again it was likely killed off by humans, since they died just 2,000 years after the first humans arrived in South America. Plus, many of these native South Americans actually used Glyptodon shells as houses. Say hello to the dire wolf, an animal which is not a wolf. I won't blame animal scientists for this one though, because they really do look a lot like wolves. But turns out dire wolves are actually more related to African jackals. Now, you've probably never heard of these guys before, because, I mean, they're not that cool. These jackal only weigh about 10 to 20 pounds, or about as much as a pug. But the dire wolf, on the other hand, got up to 175 pounds, which is 30 pounds more than the largest gray wolves today. They also had the strongest pound-for-pound bite, beating out the gray wolf once again. And they also had the highest flexibility in their teeth, which is a good thing because it meant their teeth was really good at staying bit onto whatever they caught. They also, much like wolves, lived in packs. So if these wolves were bigger, stronger, and had the same social packs that normal wolves do, why did they go extinct 13,000 years ago while gray wolves are alive today? Was it humans hunting them? Maybe, but more likely it was the big prey that the dire wolves were hunting going extinct, which in turn caused the dire wolves to starve to death. Meanwhile, the smaller gray wolf, which was accustomed to eating large prey as well as small prey, could sustain itself and continue to live today. Modern sloths are arguably the most F-tier dog shit animal around. They're exceptionally weak for their size, extremely stupid, they even mistake their own arm as food sometimes, and they can even die on a full stomach because they process food so slowly. And the whole reason sloths are even called sloths is because a French guy that found them thought they were so detestable. He literally said, "The slowness, habitual pain, and stupidity are the results of this strange and bungled conformation. These sloths are the lowest form of existence." And then named these animals after the sin of sloth. You know what the real shame is though? Sloths used to be so cool. Take for example Megatherium americanum. These guys were 12 feet tall when standing on their hind legs and weighed around 4 tons. Anyway, Megatherium was not just an extremely big sloth, because these guys actually did things unlike sloths today. You know, walk around, eating shrubs, other stuff that animals do. They were also pretty scary animals because of these things. They had massive 7-inch long claws, which they used to tear off branches to eat, swipe at predators in self-defense, or dig these massive burrows, which they used for something. Nobody has a clue what the hell they were doing in there, to be honest. Anyway, these guys ended up dying 11,000 years ago, with the cause once again probably being a mixture of climate change and humans hunting them to extinction. I'm sure you've already heard of these guys, so I'll breeze past them. Woolly mammoths were about 12 feet big, weighed 6 to 8 tons, and they ended up dying just 4,000 years ago, which means there were mammoths around when humans were just making bronze tools. By the way, the extinction of the mammoth is kind of sad. While some mammoths survived up until 4,000 years ago, the majority of them actually died 6,000 years earlier. The mammoths which did stay alive though were a small group of mammoths on a small secluded island called Wrangel Island. The only way the mammoths even got up there was through a land bridge which melted away, leaving them on this small piece of land which only had enough resources to support a couple hundred mammoths in the middle of literally nowhere. Wait a minute, you're telling me we're all alone on this island with pretty much nothing, and my only options to mate are my extended cousins? Oh my god. This is paradise, was probably what these mammoths were thinking for the first couple thousand years, until cousin loving on top of cousin loving eventually led to an entire generation of mammoth becoming so inbred their DNA probably started to look like slinkies, which caused this last population of mammoths to die out. Really a sad way to go out. After the woolly mammoth, Sabertoots are probably the most popular animal from the Ice Age. And it makes sense, cause look at these teeth. While the size of them varies from species to species, the biggest of the Sabertoots, the Smilodons, had teeth that were easily around 7 inches. Anyway, aside from that, they're about 5.5 feet long and weighed anywhere from 350 to 60 pounds. Let's get back to the star of the show, their teeth, which, while looking really scary, brings into question what they could be used for. I know what you're thinking. Obviously, they use their big ass teeth to kill prey, dumbass. Well, that's exactly what I thought too, but turns out bigger isn't always better. When it comes to teeth getting this big, they're much more likely to break. And this shows because a bunch of Smilodon fossils have broken teeth. So if you can't use these teeth like normal teeth, what was even the point? Well, nobody's 100% sure, but one theory is that these teeth were only used to make the final blow, which would give a valid use for these teeth while still minimizing their chance of breakage. Anyway, Sabertoots ended up going extinct 10,000 years ago, because like a lot of other Ice Age predators, a lot of their prey also went extinct around this time. Guys, I started a Patreon. It starts at $3. Every single tier will get your name at the end of my video, and there's a bunch of other stuff on there. If you want to check it out, it's in my description and the pinned comment. This is really something humans had to deal with, specifically those aboriginals I was talking about earlier, as Megalania was another Australian animal. These guys are monitor lizards, so the same family as Komodo dragons. So imagine a Komodo dragon beefed up to 3 tons, and you know what? Just imagine a T-Rex on 4 legs. That's basically Megalania. They were about 23 feet long and weighed 4,300 pounds, all while being able to haul ass at a top speed of 7 miles per hour, which is, okay, it's actually pretty slow. But you gotta take into account Megalania was also an ambush hunter, which means it caught its prey by surprise. So what did it eat? Well, pretty much anything that moved, but it was probably a fan of bigger game like Diprotodon. Anyway, if they were these big bad animals, then why aren't they around anymore? One theory is that humans indirectly caused the extinction of Megalania by overhunting all their prey. Another theory for their extinction though is that humans hunted them directly. But if we're being honest, I give myself a 50-50 against this thing even if I had a rocket launcher. So what the fuck am I gonna do with a spear? Bears are terrifying, obviously, but they were 10 times more terrifying in the Ice Age. Take for example Archotherium Angostodon. These guys lived in South America. They were 11 feet tall when standing on their hind legs and weighed anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 pounds. And initially I got sad when I read this because that's about how big polar bears are. And I was like, oh man, how am I going to impress my subscribers now? They're not even that big. But then I saw kilograms. Yup, these guys actually weighed anywhere from 2,000 to 4,500 pounds and were double the biggest land carnivores around today. So why did they die out? Well, it definitely wasn't humans this time. The only theory seems to be that this is another case of a predator being so big there just isn't enough food to sustain them long term. And finally, we talk about Neanderthals. Now get rid of any preconceived notions you have about them because they are not stupid cavemen. In fact, there's no reason to think they weren't just as smart as humans are today. So if we humans did not have the upper hand when it came to brains, what about brawn? Well, Neanderthals were physically dominating compared to the average man. They had broader noses, a suborbital ridge, wider pelvises, no chin, were about 5'6" tall and weighed 175 pounds. Basically, a Neanderthal was a human but shorter, bigger, and stronger. They also used tools just like us, had family units, and did all the other things that humans can. I mean, what couldn't they do? Well, one source says that while they could speak, they couldn't hit all the vocal ranges a human can. So, you know, pretty insignificant. I mean, there's some humans today that most people can't understand. Like, listen to this.
I looked at on the ATL movie and shit. I used to always say Bit Bro look like T.I.
What the fuck what did he just say? I mean, I know, I'm a Kodak fan, but it took me 8 years of listening to him to finally figure out what the hell he's saying. And I probably could have learned fucking Japanese in that time. Anyway, so why did we humans make it and they didn't? Well, the main reason is food shortage. Since Neanderthals are bigger than humans and most of that mass was muscle, it took way more calories to keep them alive. And while this might be easy in a world full of McDonald's and Girl Scout cookies, this would be much harder to sustain during the Ice Age. Also, Neanderthals may have been drowned out by interbreeding with humans, and proof of that is 70% of East Asians today have a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. You know, on a side note, the more I research Neanderthals, the more I wonder why they're a different species. I mean, aside from the slightly different physical traits, they really don't seem too dissimilar from us. So I decided to look into it, and this is what I found. Speciation occurs when a group within a species separates from other members of its species and develops its own unique characteristics. And there's this other clause that two different species can interbreed, but the offspring will be sterile. And this is my issue, because Neanderthals and humans, specifically Asians, commingled, making Neander-Asian babies. But despite that, Asians can definitely still have babies today. In fact, if there's one thing Asians are good at, it's having babies. Also, they're not even that facially different. Put two Eastern European men, a Neanderthal, and a black dude in a lineup, and ask who's the odd one out. Most people would probably pick the black guy. It can't be a physical difference either. While they were 5'6" and 175 on average, which is a slight difference from the average human height, they also match up suspiciously close to the average Mexican height and weight. So should Mexicans now be their own species? Obviously not, right? Well, okay, I'm only looking at this through my side. What's the argument for Neanderthals being a different species? Well, aside from their physical differences, which we've already went over, the bones in their ears are bigger. And also Neanderthals and humans split 500,000 years ago, but also every other ethnicity split off from Africans 120,000 years ago. But obviously every single one of these people are humans and can interbreed, so why would it be any different for Neanderthals? I don't know, I'm sure experts have a valid reason, but I really can't make much sense of it. But anyways, there you have it, that's the video. Like, subscribe, comment any video ideas, have a good day, goodbye.